Welcome to Whiskey Nightcaps, the channel where we do sip before sleep, and I am your host, Jason Davis, and today we're coming straight out of Baltimore, baby, and I'm not talking about Sagamore Rye. I know that's what most people associate with Baltimore when it comes to whiskey because they are a giant, but no, we're talking about old line American single malt whiskey, so stay right there. But before we get into it, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and also hit the like button because the algorithms are what? Hating on your boy. That's right. We'll be right back. Okay, so old line American single malt whiskey. Now this one has a particular story, an interesting background story that I like. And I know every whiskey on the market on the back of the label has some story about their founder invented whiskey or whatever. But this one is a little bit more tame, a little bit more believable, and it makes me want to support this whiskey. So, Old Line was founded by two gentlemen that were retired Navy pilots. Now, they were way on the other side of America, I believe on the West Coast. They did not know each other at all. They retired, moved to the East Coast, Baltimore, where they then did run into each other. And they said, hey, you like whiskey? I like whiskey. Let's start a company. But originally it was going to be bourbon, not single malt whiskey. However, they didn't have the money or the resources. Now, at the time, there was another distillery called Golden Distillery, which is one of the first single malt distilleries in America. And the founder or the co-founder was getting ready to close the doors on this particular distillery because his business partner, unfortunately, had passed away. And so he says, hey, my boy's not in it with me anymore, so I'm getting out of the game. These gentlemen linked up with him, and he actually let them stay on his property and taught them the fundamentals of distilling whiskey, and more particular, distilling single malt whiskey. All right. Now, after they were done and they had learned everything they needed to know, they came back to Baltimore, but still lacked the resources and the space, a building to which to distill this whiskey. So what happens? They end up linking up with another team of distillers out of state. This was Middle West Distillers, and they're out of Columbus, Ohio. So they made an agreement with these guys and they said, hey, can you distill this whiskey for us at your facility? Now, they were very much involved in the process, the quality assurance process. So they would fly out of Maryland, they would go to Columbus, Ohio to oversee what was happening and then bring the stuff back, bottle it, sell it. And now, having put in all that work, they're still in that stage where it is distilled in Ohio, but it's aged in Maryland and it's bottled in Maryland. So technically it's still a Maryland product, right? Now, for those of you that say you support the troops, you better be out buying this particular whiskey. Now, I'll tell you something else that makes this one interesting. It's an American single malt. Now, I'm a sucker for American single malts. I love everything American, right? But when it comes to my whiskey, I want to support products that come right here in the USA. And I happen to like single malt, but where is it usually made? In Scotland. Most scotches are single malt, but every single malt is not a scotch. Stay with me. Just like bourbon, in order for it to get the name of scotch, it has to be distilled in Scotland. So when a single malt is made in America, it just has to be labeled as an American single malt. Now, here's something else that makes this one interesting. Most single malt scotches are matured in either ex-sherry barrels or ex-bourbon barrels. Now, in order for something to be considered bourbon outside of being distilled here in America in the corn mash of 51%, it has to be matured in new charred American oak barrels. When the Scots get their hands on this barrel to mature their scotch in, it's already been used for a period of years to house bourbon. Now, the first spirit that goes into that barrel will get the biggest influence of that wood. And the ones that are put in afterwards get less and less influence of the wood until that barrel just has to be thrown away. What's interesting about this particular whiskey is because it's made in America, the barrels are not used bourbon barrels. They're actually what? New charred American oak barrels, which gives it a different flavor profile than a single malt Scotch would have. Okay, so I've hyped this thing up more than enough, right? Now I have upstairs where it's warm, a dram waiting, resting. It's been resting for me, getting ready, getting undressed, right? Because I can't have it out here in the cold, because cold equals no nose whatsoever. You cannot smell a cold whiskey. It just kills all of those pretty little flavors. That's why I don't put ice in my whiskey. However you drink it. Okay, so here it is. Now I want you to take a look at this color. I don't know if you can see that, but it is a very, very dark hue, a very dark amber color. And I'll tell you where this comes from. A little birdie told me that they do not mature their whiskey in normal sized barrels. They put them in smaller barrels, which increases that wood to whiskey ratio to do what? To expedite the process of aging. This is actually a non-age statement. I don't know if I mentioned that. All right, so take a look at that. That's beautiful, right? Very dark. All right, so let's go ahead and nose this sucker. It's very different. Even though it's a single malt, it almost smells like it has corn in it, but in order to be a single malt, right? Burnt honey, apricot. The wood is very present on the nose. And I don't mean in a barrel spice kind of way. I mean like wood, like it smells like cedar. I don't know if you ever had a cedar box or a humidor. Pleasant. All right, so let's see if any of that translates to the palate and if this thing is gonna get the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Okay, so the nose translates directly to the palate. However, on the front end, you get hit with that barrel spice, which is pleasant, which I love, right? So you get the barrel spice, and that's when those other tones and notes of that burnt honey start to come in. And then on the finish is when you get that cedar wood property and tannins from the wood, and then it starts to linger and hug right on down. So if I had to say thumbs up or thumbs down, we're going with the thumbs up. This one is a good investment, especially if you want to take a break from the normal bourbons and you want something different, but yet still something that's made here and by military vets. This is the one. Old line. I believe this is 43%. So it's easy on the palate. All right, so again, thank you for rocking out with your boy on another episode of Whiskey Nightcaps. We will be back with you and try to increase the frequency of the episodes and hit you all with more content. Share this video if you get the opportunity to invite more people into the Whiskey Nightcap community so we can keep these things going. All right. Cheers.